Hello everybody, welcome to Photography Concepts. We will discuss some photography terminology to help you get a better understanding of how some things can be accomplished when you view a photo or take a photo yourself. These terms are important for serious photographers to be aware of and to be able to utilize themselves. There are many forms of photography, and while some photographers may prefer one type of photography over another, these concepts exist in every form and are universal. So, whether you might prefer portraiture over architectural photography, or even event photography over still life, these concepts can still be made of use, and by doing so, you can become a more well-rounded photographer. Aperture. The first concept we will talk about is aperture, quite possibly one of the most basic concepts in photography, but also one of the most important. Aperture can be described as the size or opening of your camera's lens, and how much light is allowed into the lens's hole. By adjusting this feature on your camera, you can determine how much light will be taken in, depending on the kind of photo you are taking, and what your lighting situation is. When adjusting the aperture, a larger hole will allow more light in, while a smaller hole will allow less light in. As a result, more light will mean a brighter photo, where less light will yield a darker photo. The aperture is measured in f-stops, where each f-stop will determine if the light in your image will get brighter or darker. While there is no definitive answer as to what f-stop you should be shooting with and where which f-stop would work best, you can experiment with the different stages of f-stops, followed by various lighting situations to help you get a feel for what works best. Exposure. The next concept we will discuss is exposure. Exposure is how light or dark your image is and goes hand in hand with your aperture. Additionally, exposure can directly refer to the images or photos themselves. When a photo has taken in too much light, as a result of a large aperture, this is called being overexposed. When a photo hasn't had enough light, as a result of a small aperture, this is called being underexposed. To achieve a well-balanced photo, you will want to adjust your aperture accordingly, depending on your specific lighting situation, to get a properly exposed image. You may wonder if having overexposed or underexposed images is always a bad thing. Truth be told, there is no correct answer to this, as depending on what you are going for and what your aesthetic might be, you might actually prefer some of your images to be mildly overexposed or underexposed. Depending on what you are trying to accomplish in your photo, and if it is executed correctly, viewers will be able to tell if your overexposing or underexposing is intentional, or simply just a mistake. Manual versus automatic. The original form of photography has always been done in manual mode. Manual mode refers to the actual process of adjusting the ISO, aperture, and everything else on the camera themselves to capture images. Automatic refers to a camera, particularly a digital camera, that will adjust its settings itself to complement your specific lighting situations prior to shooting a photo. While this is usually a good feature and yields acceptable results, it is important for serious photographers to know how to shoot manually, as it provides them with more freedom to craft their own images. Practically all digital cameras that are sold nowadays have the automatic function by default, while DSLR cameras will have both the manual and automatic functions. Most cell phones or smartphones will have an automatic camera function by default, with potentially limited manual options. Viewfinder. When you are handling a camera and before taking a photo, you will peer into what is called the viewfinder. The viewfinder is essentially the window you look into to determine how you will take the photo and is essential in manual photography. Typically, small digital cameras may not have a viewfinder, as they are primarily designed to shoot automatically. This is also due to the image you are lining up to shoot will instead appear on the small LCD screen. For manual photographers, however, all DSLR cameras will have a viewfinder, which is an essential part of photography and crafting images. Focus. The focus in an image generally refers to the subject that your camera is fixated on, and will therefore display that subject most clearly, while slightly blurring out everything around it. This is a common photography technique that can be adjusted on your camera's lens, and can come in handy when you are trying to highlight a specific thing or even a person in your photo. By shooting something in focus, you will be able to draw the viewer's attention specifically to the subject you intended in your photo. Utilizing focus is commonly seen in portraiture and still life photography and can work to your advantage. Composition. Composition in photography refers to the arrangement of elements in your entire image. When composing an image, you will want to take everything into consideration before you press the shutter on your camera. For example, if your subject or surrounding is already dark to begin with, you will want to adjust the aperture so that enough light will be allowed into your camera. If there is something in particular you wish to highlight in your composition, then you will want to adjust the focus. Additionally, you might want to experiment with angles for more abstract compositions, as not all compositions are required to be completely straight and symmetrical, as mostly seen in architectural and landscape compositions. There are many, many concepts and terms in photography. The ones we just discussed were some of the basics, but also some of the most important. As you continue to learn and experiment with your camera, you will be able to generate more questions, which will then open you up to more concepts and terminology. It is important that you have the basics down first, as these lay the foundations for what it means to be a good photographer.